Alright, diving into the Meg 2, welcome to Actors Review, and today I don't really know what to say. So I went to go see this movie kind of on a whim. I wasn't planning to go see it. I didn't even know it dropped today, but I happened to go to the theater to go to something with my daughter, ended up going and seeing this as well, and honestly, let's call a spade a spade. The Meg 2 is a comedy. This is not supposed to be a serious action film, and I think that's where it kind of loses itself for a moment. So the first act is much more serious, right? There's this underwater exploration. This is when we're seeing the Megs in their home. We run into this mining facility, and I don't want to spoil the story, but essentially, if you decide to go see this, but essentially they run into this mining facility, and for whatever reason, this is considered illegal activity, or it's a faux pas. I'm not really sure. As far as I could tell, it's international waters, so you can kind of explore and do whatever you want. I don't know why it would be illegal to be down in this trench, especially since they're doing it, but let's forget logic here. Anyway, they don't want the Jason Statham and his crew to know that they're doing this underwater mining. So there ends up being this explosion and a collapse of this rocks and an avalanche, and everybody gets stuck. Long story shorter, the first act is essentially disjointed from the second two acts. So the story of this film is very, very strange. It's hard for me to kind of review this as a cohesive project because it really doesn't feel that way. We have this very serious first act where there's, seems to be a genuine antagonist, a genuine protagonist outside of just the Meg itself, right? Or all these megalodons that they run into and this giant squid that they run into and all this stuff. So in the first movie, the Meg, there was a clear protagonist, was the people, and then the antagonist was kind of this massive shark, was the megalodon, right, that they were fighting. And then they also kind of had a bad guy who was money hungry and everything. So it was much more clear in the first movie. This particular movie, I'm not really sure how all these things unfold. They don't explain things very well. There's a rivalry between Jason Statham and kind of this main bad guy who he ends up throwing hands with a couple times, and truthfully, the explanation of it is 1 second. They kind of say it in exposition as they're talking to each other, but that's really the only context that you get for this. And it's just very strange how the beginning of the movie is all underwater, kind of has these intense or tense scenes, and then the second half of the movie is kind of like a Godzilla comedy monster flick mixed with like a Jackie Chan film. It's really interesting, it's really strange, and honestly, I didn't really know what to think of it. So the first act was very claustrophobic, it was very serious, and then the second and third act, the Megs come up, into, they come out of the thermal-locked area, they come up into the main ocean zone, and they attack this island full of tourists called Fun Island, I think it was called, and Jason Statham and his crew, half of which who had just died underwater, seem to forget about all that, and they go and try to save all these people, of which they only save maybe half of them because megalodons and giant squids and octopus are eating everybody and killing everybody. So this is like two separate films, and I'm having a hard time reviewing it because I don't really know how to think of it. I don't know if it was just meant to be a comedy and totally not taken seriously, but then the first act kind of seems like it's a action thriller drama. I'm just not really sure where to go with it. I don't know how it made me feel. So I'm not trying to just crap on this movie the whole time, but there was a lot of elements that didn't work together well. It was almost like the CGI too. In the beginning, the first act, the CGI was pretty good, and while they were underwater, it felt very claustrophobic. It felt kind of real, and there was all these creative monsters and creatures that they had in this trench. And then when you get out, some of those creatures come to the surface, and they don't connect with the ground that they're walking on. So specifically, there's some of these creatures are like look like little dinosaurs, right? They're four-legged. They kind of have a tail that would be good for propelling themselves through water. When they get to the land, they're like not impacting the ground that they walk on. The shadows are kind of funky. They don't make sense for the light, where the light source is coming from, and the CGI just really throws you out of the film. And then there's some green screen work that's questionable. And again, I don't want to just crap on this film, but it really did not seem like a cohesive project. It seemed like one person had an idea, and it wasn't long enough to be its own film, so they're like, okay, let's start with that. And then they're like, you know what, let's just kind of go another direction with the second half of the film and make it a monster flick and make it really fun. So it was kind of like two different films that I was watching. Now, what brings this film together? Well, the ending was pretty fun. I did hear people in the theater laughing. There were some times where I laughed. So this is kind of like Jackie Chan meets Jurassic Park meets, Jason Statham, right? It's kind of like this really hilarious monster flick, dinosaur flick. I'm not really sure what to call it, but that's the Meg too. It's just kind of one of these things where you just accept it for what it is, and if you choose to go watch it, well, God bless you. Because honestly, this is something that I would wait for. If you want to watch it for free on Amazon Prime or Netflix, when they pick it up, that's probably going to be a better option for you. This isn't a big screen experience. I really don't think it's worth throwing down, 10, 15, 20 bucks to go see. However, the redeeming qualities is that you get to see Jason Statham kicking butt. The cast it's an interesting one. It's kind of mixed. Just like the first Meg, there's a mixture of American actors that you would recognize, and then there's some actors that you might not recognize because they work out west, right? They're in China and Korea and all these things. So Jing Woo was really good actually in the film. I think he did a pretty good job. It was clear that they were trying to make him like a Jason Statham type, trying to make him an action star in the United States. So if this was his first film in the US, kind of an intro to him, I think it was fun. I think he did okay. Cliff Curtis usually does a good job. There just wasn't much to do, right? The dialogue felt pretty clumsy. It felt like it was rushed. There's just a lot of missing elements in this film. Skylar Samuels was just there. And I'm not knocking these actors because I am one, and I understand that sometimes the material that you're given, you can only do so much with. So I think that they did the best with what they had. I just think the screenplay was rushed, and honestly, it just felt totally disjointed. So The Meg 2, not a movie that I would recommend to see. I would say I would give this movie, a 3.5 normally, but you know how I am. I love making films. I love being in films. And there's always redeeming qualities, right? So what's the redeeming quality? Well, you get to see Jason Statham and Jing Woo kick some butt. And there's some really funny moments, actually, from Paige Kennedy, who kind of steals the show in a couple scenes. So I'll say, on behalf of those guys, I'm going to bring this up a full point. Let's give it a 4.8 out of 10. It's something that you can watch if you want a good laugh when it comes out on VOD, and you can watch it on Netflix or Hulu or something like that. So save a couple bucks, see it when it comes out, and you can watch it in your home if you want to have a good laugh. That's my review. Check out some more videos on the channel. We'll see you next time.